Hi. Regular synth and software viewers, the cool people, have been following January's Believe It in Music Week. It was the online version of this year's NAMM show, where companies often introduce major products. Well, here's a great demo of one of them, Yamaha's YC88 Stage Keyboard. It was done by Blake Angelos, who really shows off what the instrument and also the 76 key version can do. Hint: the YC88 is set up for bread and butter keyboard sounds, but it's also a MIDI controller, and the 88 key version that he demos here has real weighted, coated wood piano feeling keys. We're very happy to see that there's still an audience for high-end keyboards.
We have two different lines. We have the CP series, and that's a piano-focused instrument. It has a dedicated acoustic piano section, a dedicated electric piano section, then a subsection on there. And I actually have an article on YamahaSynth.com that is on the home page right on the very front. When you hit Learn More underneath the announcement of the YC series, you'll see that article, and I cover this point in there because it's an important point. The idea is that the CP series is very piano-focused. There isn't an organ section like you see right here. So we've made it much more accessible to pianists. So piano-focused. The YC series is a more versatile instrument. And the reason why we say that is because obviously you have this cool drawbar organ section right here. So we don't have a dedicated acoustic piano section, but what we do have is a keys section. And there's a keys A and B. Inside this key section, you do have piano, so it will work as a piano, especially the one that I have here is the YC88, and it has the same action as the CP88, so it's a piano-focused, piano enthusiast kind of an instrument, but it's for a pianist that is playing a gig that wants to have a little bit more versatility, that wants to go to the gig and have a full VCM, virtual circuitry modeling is the name of that technology that we use for the organ modeling. It also has FM organs, so we have true 8-operator FM synthesis in this instrument for the FM organs in here. But we also use FM over in the keys section for things like that classic DX electric piano sound. There's synth leads in there that are FM. There are pads that are FM. So we have FM synthesis in here as well. And then finally, we have AWM synthesis, and that's our sample-based subtractive synthesis method that we have for all the other sounds, for the the acoustic pianos and stuff like that. Now, in contrast, the CP series only has AWM synthesis, but it also has a full complement of all of our acoustic pianos. So in the CP series, you get the CFX Concertgran, but you also get the Bosendorfer Imperial 290, which is not in this particular instrument. The CFX is, the C7 is in here, the S700. There's a lot of pianos in here, but we really go a little bit further with the CP by adding the Bosendorfer, and then we also have two different uprights in the CP series. One that's a perfect SU7, which is our kind of top-of-the-line premium upright, and then we have a U1 that's a little bit more, let's say, character-rich. How's that? I'll play it for you. It's got a little bit. In fact, I can, since I'm right here, I'll give you an idea of that since I brought it up. Yeah, this is the U1. So so we have the pianos in here. That sounds really good in my headphones here. That's the main difference between those two lines, is that piano-focused, versatile for keyboardists that want to go to the gig and have a selection of lots of sounds with different technologies. That's what the YC is about. Oh no, it's all built into the instrument. We have a thing called YC and CPOS. In this case, YCOS, where about every several months, semi-regular basis, I like to say, we will update the OS and add new sounds and new features. And to launch that concept with the launch of the YC series of the full YC 73, 88, and 61, we have a new OS called OS 1.1. That adds two new acoustic pianos. One of them is what's called the Nashville C3, which is another character-rich piano that we recorded in our Yamaha Artist Services studio in Nashville, and we processed it through a analog tape emulation system, basically. So it has this really interesting warm sound, but it's not a absolute perfect piano. It's got some funk to it. But it's a great sounding piano, and it's great for things like pop and rock and things. I'll play through all those things in a second too. There's no loading in. When the YC turns on, it takes about 2 seconds for it to power up. Nothing loads in it. We have our own custom chips that we make at Yamaha, and that's why our stuff tends to behave faster in that regard. So we also have the live CF3 that we added from the CP300, which was a big requested piano. So 2 new acoustic pianos, and then we have 2 new electric Tyne pianos. One of them is called 73RD Studio, which is a kind of a chimier sounding electric piano. And then one of them is called 73RD Stage, which is more of a modified one that has the instrument that we used for that session. Had a lot of customized things like preamp, speakers, tines. Everything was totally tricked out. The other one is more of a original vintage electric piano. So that's what we have when we have this CPOS updates, is that we give you more sounds. And there's some basic feature things that we added to this as well. Just some usability things, not big things, but the main thing is that we add new sounds, new features, new effects, things like that on certain OS updates. Another thing to talk about when you talk about the YC as well is there's a lot more effects in the YC. In the keys section, you have 2 dedicated keys effects sections right here for each keys A and keys B. So if I go to keys A and then go to keys B, 2 separate effects here. And you have 32 algorithms that you can choose. There are 32 different types of effects in each of those. To contrast that with CP, CP has very specific electric piano effects. There are things like phasers, flangers, wahs, but you don't get things like, lo-fi kind of things, or low-pass filter, or slicer, or, lots of more just different types of effects. So that, again, is a tip of the hat to the versatility of this instrument. The idea that you can take this to the gig, you'll have your drawbar organs, you have synth leads, you have real synth leads, you have also a single knob filter and EG control on the front, so you can edit things on the fly. It's not super deep because it's meant to be a stage instrument, a stage keyboard, but you have a little bit more control in that regard as well, whereas the CP has a little bit more of the straight-up piano kind of focus. It has real-time controls and stuff, but they're very focused on each section on what they do. In the instrument itself, you have a thing called live set. So you see me selecting here, and I think in my screen over in whatever side it is, it's over there. I'm seeing myself. Next to the YC logo, there's a close-up of this area here in the center. So this is called a live set. There are 160 of these inside the instrument. Live sets are basically snapshots of the system. So in this case, all I have is just the CFX piano. If I select something else in here, though, like this one here is just the organ section with rotary speaker, and then I have this set as a split, so I have something to comp over here. So if I have a bass player, I don't have to kick bass on this one. But these are called live sets. So you'll notice that each time I set this, another configuration happens, another configuration happens, another configuration happens. So inside of this live set, each of these have, where it says sound, we go down here to master keyboard controller, and I turn on the mode switch for that. So I have that set in here, and I'm going to turn on what's called the advanced zone switch, because this allows me to get at all of the parameters I can set up in a single zone. And then in the zone settings, you have 4 zones across it as a MIDI keyboard controller. So if I drop into zone 1, you have things like zone switch, transmit channels, so you can transmit on any channel on any zone externally, octave shift transpose, note high, note limit, bank LSB, MSB, and program change, so you can get to whatever you're getting to with standard bank select, volume settings, pan settings, and then since I have the advanced setting, I can go down here and see like transmit, note, bank, program change, volume, pan. I can turn those things off. So if I want to select a sound, but I don't want to send, for whatever reason, pitch bend, or I can turn those on and off as needed. And each one of those zone setups inside the instrument is specific to the live set. So you have 160 custom locations to set up for control over whatever you want. So a single button push configures a whole rack of everything. The other thing that's slick about this too is that it's a USB audio and MIDI interface. So via USB, I can connect to my computer. If I have a virtual instrument up that I want to control as well, I can add that into the mix, and it will, since it's bidirectional, it'll send the output to it. It's an audio interface, so I can monitor it through my headphones. In the menu area, under General, there's an I/O volume here for USB audio, and I can control the overall input into the instrument. So I have some control directly here if I want to turn, wow, my virtual instrument's a little loud, so I can turn the USB audio volume down here without having to go to the computer. So it's very kind of nicely, ideally set up for controlling things, for integrating with computers. It's also iOS compatible. So if you have a, one of these kind of Lightning to USB connectors, you can connect it to your phone or your iPad and use virtual instruments from there, or playbacks, backing tracks or whatever. We actually have, we're going to do that Believe in Music event next week, and we have some videos that we're going to have up there, and one of them is done by Dom Segalis. He is a Steinberg guy, but he also does work for us as a keyboardist, and he's got some really cool things to show how it integrates with Cubase, and every single one of these controllers on the front transmits MIDI control data. So in the let's say you just want to use this as a controller. You can turn off all the sections, and yet every single control is still active. So I could use these drawbars to control a virtual instrument if I wanted to. They're set for their own control numbers, so you don't change them here. But every single DAW nowadays can just do a learn thing, and you can set up how you want it to work and then save it in the project or whatever to do it. So yeah, it's a slick, that's one thing that he commented to me about when we released the YC61, because this is identical to the 61, is that he's like, man, we need to talk about how cool of a controller this is for DAW. I mean, everything sends. It's amazing. So that's a very slick thing about it. And the drawbars, by the way, just so you know this. So here's my upper drawbar, right, and lower. See, they have different colors. This is a cool design feature of this instrument. The drawbars have this cool translucent strip, so I can see underneath. If I change to another sound, like say this one here that has different drawbar settings, I can see at a glance where they're at. So they're not motorized or anything, but I can still see where my settings are. And if I just touch one of these and move it, then it'll update. But as I move from one drawbar organ to another, I see my settings without having to do things with it. And then you have 7 different LED backlights that you can customize these. Right now I have the upper set to blue and the lower set to red. But I just love the design element of this. Is a fresh, interesting take on the whole drawbar organ product design, having these LEDs with the cool displays on it. It's really neat. It's really cool how it works. And then also you have rotary speaker control here, right? You have 3 sets for vibrato and chorus, 3 different settings, like the real drawbar organ. And then you have organ percussion here. That's on their top. So you have second and third, slow, fast, normal, soft. Rotary speaker effects are over here in this section that's called speaker amp. You have 2 different types of rotary speakers. You have a rotary A, which is your standard rotary speaker, and rotary B, which is a larger rotary speaker that has a transistor preamp assigned to it as well to give you a little bit more drive. Good for rock. The other one, the rotary A, I'd probably use for jazz, R&B, stuff that's less aggressive. Rotary B, I'd use definitely for rock. It just has a really strong drive to it, and a little bit bigger sound portion. So. In fact, I'll go through just the different sounds here. So this one here, this is H1. In fact, let's talk about just the organ sounds in here. You have H1, H2, and H3. Those are different types of the vintage drawbar organs. So H1 is like your perfect one, the one that sits in the studio. And I have a little bit of drive on this guy. I'll pull this down a bit. This is your 3 down. FC7, my foot was off it. So really easy to get to So that's an H1 sound. H2, this is this one here. This one has a little bit more of a played in kind of sound. They all have a little bit different harmonic characteristics. So one thing that's cool about this one is it has a very specific kind of poppy percussion sound and a little bit more leakage kind of. Now, just as a side note, since I brought that up, if I want to now kind of customize this H2 sound, I can go into organ settings, sound, and go to and look at things like leak level here. So if I turn that up, tons of leakage, or I can bring it down a little bit. So I have some things. Key click level here is pretty high. Now it's completely off without organ percussion. There's the key click in there. So even though we have these starting points, H1, the perfect one, H2 is this more kind of played in one, you still have the ability to go through here and change a few things inside the organ model itself. Another thing that's specific about this that's cool too is the expression type. I have it for drive plus volume, which is how it does work. So I have the FC7 all the way down, but you still hear it a little bit. But so it not only hits the volume, it also increases the preamp drive. So it behaves more like the real thing. It's kind of a cool thing that they added to it. Okay, so that's the H2. Again, is that more of a played in kind of sound. And then finally, and I have it here, this one right here. So this one's called H3. H3 is like a totally customized rock organ. So it has a really, and I have this going through rotary speaker B right now with not a lot of drive. Drive and tone. So H3 definitely more of that rock kind of organ sound, customized sound in there. Now I want to show you let me go through some of my live sets here. I got to go back a little bit here. So we have 3 FM organs in here as well. F1 is just your straight up sine wave organ. Now, in the F organs, you don't get vibrato, chorus, and percussion because that's specific to the H models. But you do still have the ability to run it through a rotary speaker, which gives it this kind of cool sound. Another thing, and let me go back once just to the H1 for a second. And I'll just grab the lower manual here. Here, right there, there's your foldback. So foldback, as you know, is it's part of the drawbar organ experience. So with the F1 organs, though, this is just a sine wave organ, and you get this cool bass, but there's no foldback. And it's something that a lot of the gospel guys immediately were like, that's really cool. Man, that's a fat low end. Especially if I have a built-in master EQ, I can tweak that out, and I can also use the tone here to drive it a little bit more. But this is all FM here running through this rotary speaker, and this is one of those, I just love this sound. So there's something that's kind of churchy with this sound. It's a pure sound, but running through the rotary speaker, it gives it some I don't know, organic quality. I don't know how to put it. I just love it. So that's F1, sine wave organ. Only 8 drawbars in here because there's 8 operators that it's controlling, and that's what I'm bringing down here with each of these. Just each of the organ partials. It still is doing all these organ partials correctly, just with sine waves. So that's F1. F2. Combo organ, more of an English style. That's what this one is. And with this one, I'm running it through in the speaker amp section rather than the rotary speakers on this one. You have choices between lead, crunch, and double. Each one of those are different amplifier models. Lead is more of a brighter one. Crunch is more of a mid-range fat one. And double is kind of a little bit more of a, again, sort of a mid-range, just a different tone. I mean, here's the lead. Here's the crunch. A little bit high. And I have this split as well. So you have these different amplifier types, and for those combo organs, I sort of prefer to run them through that instead of the rotary speaker, since a lot of the rock acts used just speakers for the combo organs instead of a rotary speaker. Well, for me, that's a good question. Some people like keyboard amps. I personally don't. I haven't used a keyboard amp in 20 years probably because they're mono. And for the longest time, you know, my keyboards, at least since the early 90s, actually late 80s, were started to output in stereo. So what I personally run through is a set of DXR 10s for smaller gigs. Those are powered speakers that we make. So I recommend for almost everybody to, you know, set up their system in stereo, especially if you're going to use more than just sounds that are mono. You know, for a single synth lead, yeah, maybe you can get away with just an amp, or for just organ, yeah, maybe you can get away with an amp. But when you start talking about acoustic pianos, electric pianos, anything that has auto pan, you're losing it. And especially with our pianos are sampled in stereo, and they just sound a lot better. So I use definitely an uncolored system. Either I would just route with my two stereo matched speakers, two DXR 10s, or I'll take my little MG mixer if I need more inputs than just a single keyboard. Actually, another cool thing about this instrument is that I can get away without bringing a mixer if I have two keyboards, because this does have an aux input with a gain control. So I can route my second keyboard into the outputs here and then send those just to the speakers. So, you know, it's a simpler setup. It's very, you know, they thought about it for a stage keyboard setup. But yes, as far as the amp simulator, I'd much rather send this to the stereo system and use the speaker effects here rather than try and do that on an external. Anyway, so this is F2. Last one is F3. F3 is more of those that Italian kind of sound for where did I put it here? Well, I'll just turn it on. You can just hear the difference between here's F2, here's F3. The Italian organ sound is kind of a little bit more of a sawtooth wave, I guess. It's brighter. This one, the English one, which is I just set it to, is more of that square sound. So different types of combo organs with those F1, F2, F3. So those are your organs. That's pretty much it right there. Yeah. So another thing, just because I brought that up before, that the CP series for pianists, the YC series for versatile stage keyboardists, right? When you go to things like Montage and Modi X, we like to call those are deeper instruments. That's where we're talking now as far as an audio interface goes. The Montage sends 32 out via USB. Modi X gives you 10. So you have multi-channel outs, and it's a little bit more applicable to a product like those, not just because they're deeper products, but because you have different parts. They're multi-timbral. These aren't multi-timbral, the tone generators. There's just one channel that it sends and receives on. But when you're talking about a Montage where you have 5 parts, drums, bass, guitar, keys, and a lead sound, when you do want to go to the DAW and you do want to do individual outputs, yeah, then you'd probably want to have individual outputs for each of those so you can just record everything in one pass and have separate. And those don't carry the system effects when you send them to individual outputs, which is what you want. You want those insertion effects like rotary speaker for your organ or distortion for your guitar, but you don't want to send it with the reverbs of different types. So when you send it to those individual outputs, you bypass the system effects, which makes sense because you're going to use probably, a system effect inside your instrument so that everybody gets the same reverb, But that's kind of a little side point there, but yeah, if you want the individual outputs, that's what those products are generally going to be for. But you still have the ability to record audio back and forth. In fact, the tune that I use for clinics and things like that, or performances, I recorded everything with a single YC except the drums and the bass. But how I did it was I would record a MIDI track first, and then when I got it how I wanted, I render it as audio, and then take the MIDI track and put that in a folder, and then mute the folder. And then because every DAW on the planet, I use Cubase, but pretty much every DAW on the planet now has pretty slick time compression, real-time thing. So if you slow things down and speed things up, the audio doesn't change, You have this flexibility with MIDI now with audio in a lot of ways. So I use the YC a lot to record multiple tracks. When I'm done, I just put the MIDI track away, change the sound, play another MIDI track, play to the audio track, record it again. And so it does really work nicely in a DAW. Plus, you have all of these are sending MIDI control messages. So I can do all sorts of stuff. If I want to bring up a virtual instrument, I can add that to it as well and still control it. It's pretty slick. Just to kind of talk about that computer connectivity since you brought it up. This does work very well. It's just not as deep as something like a synthesizer is. So with the keys section, another cool thing about this design is that you just turn things on and off. So if I want to have, let's say I just want to start out with something like an initialized sound. So now nothing's on. How fast does it take for me to build something really quick? So what I want to do is I want to put a keys A with a piano. I'll put a pad on it, and then I'll add an organ sound and use that sort of as a pad as well. So one of the things that's slick about this interface is that it is really fast to do things that you want to do. So first thing I want to do is add a piano sound. So here's my piano sound. I'm going to turn the tone up on this volume. I have this set how I want it to. I want some effects in here, so I'm going to add a damper pedal resonance effect to this piano. And I turn on this effect here, and then I'm going to go in here until I find this thing that says DR, damper pedal resonance. So you can hear the damper pedal in there. Gives it that wispy sound. Well, I'm going to turn the depth of that down real quick so I get it to where Okay, I'm good with that. So now I have my piano set. Now for the pad sound, I'm going to hit this, the keys B. It automatically updates to keys B. So I'm now looking at that. I'm not editing keys A. It's kind of cool how that works. And then I don't want a synth sound. I'll do a synth pad. So I just select here. You have piano, electric piano, synth, and others. So synth is the category I'm in now. And then I can just go through here and see when I find something here that says analog pad. That was it right there. That looked pretty good. There it is. Okay. Okay, now because this is set, I realize that's a little loud, so I'll just turn that down a little bit. Now I want to add with this one, I think a chorus might be nice, so I'll turn on a chorus here. And I'll turn off the piano just so I can just listen to that one real quick. Okay, now we'll turn the piano back. Cool, so I have now a piano and a pad. And then the last thing, I'll just turn on maybe an organ sound. And I'll make this one maybe one that has a little bit more of a whistler sound. So there, that's it. So, the idea of being able to build this stuff without getting into a deep menu dive is a big, big point about both CP and YC. This one-to-one interface is really fast in doing that. Another cool thing I like about this is I can turn those two sections off, and I'll look at this analog pad, and I just want to make it a little bit brighter maybe or darker. I have single knob filter control right here that you have 8 different settings for that have different resonance and cutoff frequency capabilities in here. So I can go in here and say, okay, that's a little better. And then I also have a single knob EG that changes, attack and release maybe simultaneously. So this one has more release now, maybe too much, maybe just a little bit of release. Okay, that's what I want. So now, so pretty fast. I still also, you notice this is damper pedal resonance. If I want a little bit more control over the dynamics of the piano, I can throw a compressor on here as well. So one of the sounds, compressors right here. Compressor off, compressor on. Turn the rate up and the depth, and it just gives it a little bit more boost when you need it. Or if I want to really do some pumping, like a very specific, like, if I'm doing dance music and I want that super compressed sound, I can do that. Another slick thing is that you can do some neat things. If I want to change the order of these, I want the compressor to feed into the damper pedal resonance. Right now it's damper pedal resonance. They run in series. If I hold down the exit button and I select it, I can switch the configuration of how the effects are set up. They just swap the settings. Maybe not on this one, it's a big deal, but if you have something like an electric piano where you want phaser into compressor, and then you say, well, wait a minute, maybe I want the compressor first. It's just a matter of hitting it and it switches it over. So building a sound is really simple. Now I'll just play some sounds that are that are stuff that I've already made in here. So you have your pianos. Let me go back to my piano set. It's here. So the CFX. CFX is our big 9-foot concert grand. So it has a very it's a big sound for one thing. But the thing I like about a CFX is that it was designed to have a really strong fundamental. So it's very, very expressive. But the notes that you play don't have a lot of note bloom around them. And it makes it very ideal for sitting in a mix really well. It also has a projection quality, the CFX does, that a lot of pianos don't. The full CFX 9-foot concert grand, I talked to a classical pianist once, and he told me that the things he loves about the CFX is that he can play a Rachmaninoff piano concerto acoustically and project over the orchestra. And he said, I don't know a piano in the world that has the ability to do that. And it's not because it's louder, it's because they engineered it with certain types of alloys and hammer designs to have a little bit stronger fundamental. So it just tends to pop right out. And it makes it ideal for recording, definitely. I love the piano itself. Now, I'm going to switch to another sound. Now, I just switched to another sound, but you still hear the CFX playing. That's because you can switch between live set sounds and not cut off the previous sound. So if I'm here and I go, I just changed to the C7, but you're still hearing the CFX. So now, moving along, just to point that out. Here's the C7. So the C7 is 7-foot 6-inch. And this one definitely has a brighter sound, no question about it. It's great for gospel, great for things where you really want it to pop. CFX is probably the most recorded piano in rock, definitely pop music history, I think. The thing I love about this C7 in here, though, is it also has a very nice, quiet. That's a great piano. Two great acoustic pianos right there with the C7 and the CFX. I played earlier that U1. I'll play a few of these other ones in here too. Let me just grab my U1 here. So I call this U1 at home. This one has So if you listen to this piano, you probably can't hear it over the Zoom call. Man, it has such a, it really sounds like I'm in front of an upright piano in my living room. Again, it's got a lot of character to it. So a killer upright piano. Other things in here I'll talk about, I said OS 1.1, this is our OS update that we've added some new sounds. So first one I'll play is the new Nashville C3. It's related to that U1, that character-rich piano. Now with this one I have the compressor up, so I just turned it off. with this one, it's great for definitely pop music. I would use this on, or I'd be or country music or something. So the Nashville C3 is a 6'1", I think, so it's a smaller grand. A lot of Nashville players like the smaller grands. They just, it's a, I don't know, a sound. So we added that to this. And the thing I like about these pianos that played in this, meaning that they're just maybe not in perfect tune, is that you can find tons and tons of perfect premium pianos all over, from different manufacturers, electric instruments, from virtual instruments. There are all these perfect pianos. And the one thing that I hear from a lot of people is like, man, I'm so tired of having a perfect concert ground on everything that I play when I have my, I just wish that you guys would make something that had a little bit more character to it. And so that's why we made these, is because we had a lot of requests from different artists that said, can you guys just make a piano that's not perfect, that just is sampled like the one in my house? So that's why we added this. Next to that, I have the Live CF3. This is just a brighter piano from our CP300. It was a big request from people that had the CP300. If you're not familiar with that instrument's a lot bigger. It weighs a lot more. It's like over 70 pounds. It has built-in speakers. So it's a big keyboard for a stage keyboard. And we released this at 41 pounds. By the way, the YC73 is 29 pounds. So 73 notes, weighted action, but still lightweight. We designed that for keyboardists. And then lastly, the YC61 is under 16 pounds. It's super light. But this one at 41 pounds, but then when I had some people play, I remember I was at some event, and one of the worship directors came over and said, do you guys have the CF3 in here? And I go, no, we don't have it. And he goes, oh, I really wish it was in there, because, man, my back's starting to hurt after moving the CP300 around, and I just love the size of this. So we heard that, and we added that CF3 to this, and the CF3 was the piano before the CFX that we had as our top concert grand. Lastly, I'll just play the last two sounds. So this is 73 RD. This one's got a nice chimey sound to it. It's a time piano. So this one's more of that perfect vintage electric piano. I can add a phaser to it, VCM phaser at the touch of a button. Washy phaser. Then next to that is the RD or 74 RD Stage. This one has a lot more, lots of thwank in the low end. This is the one that's all completely customized. These were real instruments. This one was from LA. The other one I think was from Japan. And they're both backline instruments that are highly sought out for people that want to have this exact sound. So that's why we chose these as content to add to this instrument in 1.1. So those are the 4 sounds we added in the OS. And I'll just play a few other sounds because I have, it's amazing the choices of sounds that they put in this instrument. One of our pretty big evaluators, influencers at one of the retailers did when he evaluates these things, he literally plays through every single sound. And he got back to us and said, I played through every sound, and, I didn't find a sound in here that I couldn't find a use for on a gig. I mean, you guys really covered it. And that was a very high compliment for us, because that was exactly the point. We wanted to have the right kinds of sounds. So like this one right here, you don't expect, this huge French horn section, sorry, I messed that up. So horn section, just right there. Another thing, string pads, there's lots of those in here. This one I have, this one as a combination of fast and slow strings, and I don't think I have any effects at all. I just wanted to play a cool string pad. If I want to add effects, I could make this into whatever I want. I mean, I can go to a chorus sound in here. I can add to this same sound, maybe not a chorus, but a slicer effect. So you can instantly change things and add things. The effects in here are top notch, and they're really easy to get around because all you really have is a depth and a rate thing. We wanted to make this so that if you don't have to get deep to edit the sounds and to get some meaningful change. If you want to get deep, that's why we have a montage where something like a chorus effect, you can edit every single parameter in there if you want to. But I don't know how many people do, like, I really want to tweak the mid-range cutoff of just the chorus effect. You know, on a stage, you're not going to do any of that. You just want fast depth and rate. That's all I need, you know, and I got it where I want it. So we have clavs in here too. That's with the touch wah effect. There's also a pedal wah effect and my stupid joke, an Ottawa effect, very popular in Canada. A little close to my sustain. So there's acoustic guitars in here. But I love this one. You can, at the touch of a button, I can have this cool sine wave sort of lead sound that I'm using in this case as a pad. So now, switch this on, and what I've done with this one is I turned sustain pedal on for the organ. You can do that. You know, organs by default don't have sustain on because you control the volume with the volume pedal, right? But with this one, I turned it on, and I use the organ in a lot of sounds that I've created. And I'll talk about, I uploaded them to Soundmondo. I'll bring that up in a second. And I'm using the organ in this instrument as a pad mostly in a lot of ways. You know, it can obviously function as a straight up drawbar organ, but sometimes you want to use it in a different way. And so that's, you hear the organ in there? Speaker. Speed up the rotary. So there's lots of cool combinations of sounds with this instrument that you can create and, you know, induces some cool stuff with it. It goes a little bit beyond just being, you know, oh, it's a stage keyboard, it has pianos and electric pianos and that's it. You can also do these cool things because it has a looper delay. This effects section over here is pretty slick. Basically, it's another set of 32 different effects in just this section here that I can route to wherever I want it. In this case, I selected looper delay. This one routes to all of them. If I move it out of here and like this one is analog delay, see, now I can send it to just the keys A, keys B, or the organ. So it's an effect that I have over here when the 2 effects per key section isn't enough, or in some cases where I have the speaker amp section. In fact, in this one, before I show you this cool thing in here, I have a sound in here that I'll show you. Where is it? It's up here. It's this one called Mean. This one's Mean 73. This is a electric piano sound, but I'm using what's called the case speaker amp effect. So that's a speaker and preamp model of an electric piano system, right? So it has a cool drive sound, so I like using it on electric pianos. But what if I turn on my organ here, and now I don't have rotary speaker for the organ? I wish I had rotary speaker too. So we gave you a simple rotary speaker effect in here that's just called, what's it called? Simple rotary? Yeah, right here. So now I'll turn this up. I had this set up. Okay, it's this one. I'm sorry, I was using the wrong sound. So same thing with this one. Case, but I want to use the rotary speaker over on my organ as well. So So I have an effect here that I can use as my utility effect. And then it's really easy to route controllers. You can't see my control over here, but I have a modulation slider that I have routed to control the speed. So that's another use of that effect. It's sort of this cool utility effect that I can route to where I want it to. You can do these cool looper things with a looper delay. So I have that going here. Turn on another. Ring modulator effect in there. There's some kind of cool stuff. This one I have the slicer effect. So I can just turn things on and off, right? I can select, because I have the seamless sound switching, I can go to an entirely different sound here and still have a looper effect, or I can just play over the top. If I turn on the looper effect on this one, and if I want to play over what I have here, I can just touch on the looper effect select button, still have the looper playing, but I pulled myself out of it. So now if I want to add so, you know, just another way to use the instrument. It's just it's got some tricks under its hood here, no question. So let's say somebody is listening to this and they go, "Oh wow, I love that sound that he had. How do I get that sound? Like maybe that guitar sound that I had." That was actually I choose that sound a lot because we have a SoundCloud. It's just a Yamaha Synth on SoundCloud. We have lots of podcasts and lots of audio demos and stuff. Like and subscribe. Released a bunch of sounds for the YC, and one of the biggest ones out there was that guitar sound I played that people wanted to check out, which we thought was kind of, wow, that's interesting. They're listening to the other sounds. So it's not just organs that they're interested in other sounds. So I had somebody ask me, "Hey man, I love that sound. Can you send it to me?" And I go, "Yeah, here." And I just send them a link to Soundmondo. So what Soundmondo is our free social sharing sound site. That's a lot of S's. Social sound sharing site that works on Google Chrome. And the reason why we use Google Chrome is because it uses web MIDI, so you can just connect USB to your computer without engaging drivers, and it recognizes it. It sees what product it is. So if I plug in the YC, it'll update to YC. While I'm on there and I unplug YC and plug in the montage, it'll update and show me montage sounds. So it has some kind of almost MIDI 2.0 wizardry to it, where it recognizes what is connected to it. It also works on iOS, here it is. So I have my iPhone here. We have a cool app that's just called Soundmondo for the iPhone, which is, one moment please. Here it is. So there's the Soundmondo app here. You can kind of see it. Oh, because here, let me put it. Where's my camera? There it is. That's where my camera is. Yeah, you can select these sounds. They update the system right here, and then you can save it locally. So I put my sound up there so that people can grab it whenever they want. We have, I think, over 70,000 sounds in total for all of our instruments combined up there. So there's lots of sounds. So a free social sound sharing thing. It supports all of our synth products, Montage, Modiax, CP, YC, and Reface, the mobile mini keyboards as well. So it's a very kind of slick add-on for our instruments is Soundmondo. The last thing I just want to talk about, just to point out, just to explain the way this is constructed. 41 pounds, super light, but it's a metal chassis. So this is aluminum alloy, and it's kind of cool how it wraps around. So it feels super substantial. Even the YC61 weighs, 15, 16 pounds, but when you pick it up, it feels like a piece of gear. It's really well made. It's one thing I love about this company is that when we make instruments, we make instruments that are well made, low failure rate, strong.
Thanks for watching, and just a reminder to please come visit synthandsoftware.com. It's become an invaluable resource for musicians, and while you're there, please be sure to subscribe. It's got a lot of great information, and you'll be doing your part to support professional music tech journalism.